Welcome back to the Premier League Lowdown. It's the review show time. It's a Sunday evening for me and George, who joins me for the Premier League Lowdown review. All of the games. No Monday night football this week, which is a blessing in disguise, I think. But we did have a Friday night game, and that is where we will start. A game week that had a lot of long throws, set pieces, headers. Feels like we're back in 2009. And talking of being back in 2009, Friday night's fixture was Leeds 2, West Ham 1. Um, Bit of, a continuing theme from West Ham. More misery for Nuno Espirito Santo. His side didn't really have much intent, I felt. They weren't really running. I mean, he's got quite an old squad, but there didn't seem to be much intent, much running. Again, Jared Bowen carrying the squad on his back for most of the game. But Leeds, I mean, certainly in the first half, were definitely the better team. Perry returns from injury. I think he was definitely an improvement on Carl Darlow. Um, Brendan Aronson, for some reason, dropped an absolute worldie of a performance. His goal was a tap in, but there was a couple of his runs where I thought he was quality as well. And Joe Rodon got a lot of the praise for this game for his defensive performance and again scoring a goal. But I think his defensive partner, Big Yeka Biel, was making his Premier League debut. 6 foot something, 6 foot 6 something, 6 foot 7. I thought he was immense as well for his first game. Um, what did you think of the Leeds West Ham game then to kick us off, George?
I think it's a huge result for Leeds. Firstly, to get a win at home, absolutely massive. And I mean, looking at West Ham, we all think, I think we all think anyway, West Ham are too big to go down. Surely not. Surely you can't have a 60,000 seat stadium in the Championship. Not with all this money. West Ham won the Conference League a couple of years ago. Now it's starting to look like quite a possibility. That's 3 losses in a row. Leeds, of course, a massive win for their survival aspirations. If you can win your home games, I think that's massively important, making it a little bit of a fortress. We've been talking on the preview about Sunderland doing that at the Stadium of Light, and if Leeds can do that, that's huge for them. They've started to do that. They've won quite a few of their home games this season, and it's those kind of 6-pointers against sides that you're going to be competing with that it's really important to get a result in. Leeds did really well, scoring 2 early goals, limited West Ham. Of course, the Paqueta one got ruled out in the first half, but then, they've limited them until the end. A fantastic goal at the end as well by Fernandes. Lovely header, but it wasn't enough. And that's kind of summed up West Ham's season. Too little, too late, not good enough.
You say too little, too late. They've obviously made the decision to sack Graham Potter. I mean, I don't think was he the first manager sacked, or was that
Yeah,
was
he
that
was.
Nuno himself? Oh well, there you go then. So Potter first manager sacked. They've brought in Nuno. Have you seen any improvement under them? Under Nuno, sorry. Or do you think Nuno could be sacked as well? Do you think he'll see the end of the season?
I don't think it's quite the same as a Forest level of things where we're going to see a manager sacked that quickly. I think, I don't know whether there's possibility in it, because what West Ham can't do is they can't go and get David Moyes again. Because he's doing a fantastic job at Everton. I mean, for West Ham to let go of David Moyes, I think that was a really poor decision. And I think they'd agree looking back in hindsight. Nuno's West Ham, though, I just think we've seen kind of little glimpses of what they can do, particularly in that first game against Everton. They were quite dominant in that second half. They looked more in control than they had done. Then it followed up with a tough game against Arsenal, and they've really struggled against Brentford, of course, at home. And now it's just like, well, where do they go from here? Because you looked at that Brentford game last week and you thought, right, this is the opportunity. Forget the first 2 because they're away from home. Nuno, this is your opportunity. Make your mark, stamp your authority, and they didn't. And now it just starts to spiral a little bit, I think. So West Ham really needs something of positivity, just a shock, maybe a little bit like that result at Nottingham Forest at the end of August. But yeah, it's not looking good for the Hammers.
Do you think spiral is the best word? Is the right word, isn't it? They are in a bit of a spiral downwards, and they do need that kind of pick me up. And I wonder when that's going to come under Nuno, because at the moment things looking very slow and without much. I think they need a bit of a kick up the arse, don't they? They're not very. Yeah, they're not moving much. On the other hand, we're talking about quality promotion sides. Chelsea 1, Sunderland 2. Uh, Chelsea. I don't know. They're very hot and cold sometimes under Enzo Maresca. I do not know what's going on with them, but Sunderland win quite late away at Stamford Bridge. Not an easy place to go either and get a result. A win away at Stamford Bridge, thanks to some questionable Chelsea defending towards the end, letting the striker hold the ball up. And then, to be fair, the finish from Taby is so nice to just kind of curl it as the ball drops to him. I thought it was amazing. And if anything, it proves that Sunderland have really adapted well to the Premier League to hold on till, the 90th minute in games and then snatch a result. That's something that often the newly promoted teams can't do because the players, it's a step up in quality and therefore it's a step up in, effort levels, which means a step up in stamina. But for them to hold on, fair play. They're up to second in the table. They've adapted so well to the league. They've actually got the best points return from any promoted side since Hull in 2008, 2009. So this return to 2009 that we're having this game week is absolutely amazing for me. Um, yeah, Chelsea again not on the ball. None of the promoted three sides are in the relegation zone, which 9 games in is quite impressive considering the absolute abysmal quality that we had last season and arguably the season before. Is there so two-part question? What did you think of the performance from Sunderland and Chelsea? And do you think we could see all three of the promoted clubs actually survive this season? Because it's looking good for them at the moment.
Let's start with the game itself, in which, of course, Chelsea took the lead early on. And unfortunately for everyone, I think Alejandro Garnacho scored and he's becoming very
Mm.
dislikable, I think, for every single fan, particularly Man United ones. But Chelsea then had their chances and they didn't take them. Sunderland did. That's the absolute key. And you've also got to remember that Sunderland didn't just have the couple of chances that they scored in the game. Dan Ballard had one very early on, even before Garnacho scored, and that was 4 minutes in. So they showed intent. I think that's what Sunderland have done this season in all their games. I remember them coming to Old Trafford. Look, United beat them 2-0, which was fantastic for me. But Sunderland had chances in that one early on. They flashed a ball across the 6-yard box very early, and you thought, oh, are we in trouble here? They didn't stop trying throughout, and that's the intent that they've shown in games throughout this season. And that's, I think, the difference in their quality to the other promoted sides and any that we've really seen in the near past. I mean, look at them in second. It's absolutely ridiculous. I saw someone with a comment on social media yesterday. Could Sunderland do a Leicester? And the answer is no, because I just think there's too much quality in the rest of the league. Look, Sunderland have done fantastically, but none of us expected them to be at the heights that they're at. I don't think they'll finish anywhere above mid-table. Sorry to put a downer on it, but I think that luck will run out. Almost, you have to have a lot go right for you if you want to have a fantastic season, especially your first back in the Premier League. If you go and qualify for European football, I know Wolves did it a few years ago, but you have to have a lot of that luck on your side. You've got to have that quality, which Sunderland do have, to be fair. But it's just about if it falls nicely in place. Chelsea, on the other hand, I mean, inconsistency is the word to sum them up, because we've seen flashes of brilliance from them this season. You look at the game before the international break, they beat Liverpool 2-1, and they deserve to, I think you'd argue. But then you look at this game and you think, right, well, Chelsea should win this, but they haven't because they've not taken the chances and they've defended poorly. I mean, like you say, that goal right at the end, questionable defending from Chelsea. They've got to be more alert to it. And so, yeah, it's a poor result for Chelsea, one that they would have felt that they should be taking 3 points. And like I said, with Leeds, you should be winning your games at home, trying to take 3 points in those. And that is a given for any sides that are looking for Champions League, even to be in the title race. And I think Chelsea were trying to make that jump this season, or at least they would have liked to anyway. Let's talk quickly about the promoted sides. I don't think all three will stay up, just because there is definitely that quality gap. Sunderland, I said they stay up right from the start of the season, and they are proving that by far, proving everyone wrong. I think there's potential for one of Leeds or Burnley too, but I think one of them will go down. It's just chance, isn't it? Like if you look at the teams involved, the odds are that you're going to get one of them go down. It's very tight down there, particularly as you get to the later end of the season. So I think 2 will stay up, which is great because we've not had that in the last few years, but not all 3.
I do think it is interesting as well because in the past we've had newly promoted sides who then come January maybe haven't had the financial backing to push on and to save themselves. Now we've got a Sunderland side that are well financially backed, and Burnley and Leeds who are both owned by quite rich American owners. So there's a chance that come January, if things aren't going their way, they will be financially backed. What I think will hold back perhaps Leeds and Burnley is their manager and their manager's tactics. Daniel Farker and Scott Parker. I mean, their names rhyme, so it must be right. Me and Archie, when we did our rankings, we ranked them both in the bottom tier because I don't think that they are Premier League quality. I wonder if it will be a case of one of them is slightly less Premier League quality than the other one, and that's the difference that will be made. Especially, like I say, come January when the big signings are made to kind of keep them up or to improve the good performances that they've already put in. Well, sticking with a team from up north then and Sunderland's rivals, Newcastle 2, Fulham 1. It was a bit of a scrappy win, but Newcastle are back on track with that home win. They struggled to take their chances, but got there in the end. That's all you can ask for. And talking of scrappy, Fulham's goal was incredibly scrappy. Hitting, I think it was the crossbar, and then
Yeah.
it bounces down, and then it's a header, and then it kind of trickles over the line. It wasn't the greatest, I'll admit. Um, but it does pose an interesting question. I think Newcastle, the result was. I'd expect them to get the result against Fulham, especially at home, as we've been talking about home advantage. And this is a Newcastle side that are kind of only just getting their season started after a quite slow start and a bit hit and miss. Fulham, on the other hand, this is their fourth loss in a row. We'll talk more later about fourth losses in a row, I'm sure. Don't worry. But Fulham's fourth loss in a row. They're currently only 3 points above Nottingham Forest, above the relegation zone, sitting in 17th. Bear in mind, this is a Marco Silva team that last season could have been pushing for Europe, but there were question marks about why they didn't push on. Marco Silva, widely sought after, especially by Saudi Arabian clubs for a time. Everybody was praising the job he'd done at Fulham. Now things aren't looking so good. Do you think it's panic time for Fulham? Do you think it's time to maybe start thinking, the alarm bells are going off? They didn't sign too many players in the summer either, so this is basically the squad from last season. Yeah, what do you make of Fulham's chances at the moment?
I think Fulham have gone under the radar for all the wrong reasons. We all kind of talked at the start of the year about Fulham pushing on. They had a really good year last year, and we thought comfortable mid table, and maybe they can go on and push for European qualification, make that next step. And the start of the season with positivity. You think, look, they showed themselves up fairly well against Manchester United in that second game. They got a late draw against Brighton on the opening day, and they look to be doing that Fulham thing of hanging in games, getting results, grinding them out. And then the last four, I mean, it's just completely fallen off a cliff. And you look at where they're at now, right above the relegation zone. And look, 3 points to three sides that have been very poor, to be fair to them. There is still a gap there, but it's not the kind of position that Fulham will want to be in. And we talk about this promising side of players managed by Marco Silva, and they've just not really kicked on. So I think there is definitely a time to panic. They need to make some changes. I'm not 100% sure on what Fulham's fixture run looks like, but if that can be kind to them, if they can get some results out of it, that could be massive for them. And just prop themselves up the table a little bit. That'll give a massive boost of confidence. You don't want to be sitting around 17th. That's where it starts to get nervy.
Yeah, I mean they've got it's obviously EFL Cup action midweek, so they're away to Wickham first, but then they're at home to Wolves. That's quite a good fixture for them
Yeah.
to certainly to push away from the relegation zone. And then they're away to Everton, not an impossible game to win. And then they're at home to Sunderland. So again, a kind of mixed bag of definitely the Wolves game they've got to be looking at as, a real chance to, show that we can't be associated with any of these relegation fodder teams. But at the moment, things not looking great for Marco Silva's team, and I wonder if he's thinking, "Damn, I should have taken some of that Saudi gold that came along because." at this rate, they're at real risk of getting relegated, and it's a far cry as well from the team that got relegated under Scott Parker. Do you remember that
Mm,
Fulham team that
yeah.
had some great players in it? This team does not look the same quality. Bernd Leno is perhaps, single-handedly or two-gloved-handedly keeping them in some of these games, and they really need to improve. Right. Moving on, we've got to get one of our teams out of the way sooner rather than later. Manchester United 4, Brighton 2. United up to 3 wins in a row. That massively hairy Afro lad might actually be getting his haircuts fairly soon. I think the difference from a neutral point of view, United were just so much more clinical than Brighton. Things starting to really gel under Amorim. The new signings hitting the ground running. Cunha getting his first goal for United and at Old Trafford. That must be great. And Buemo as well at the brace. He is a quality player, and that is really showing. Brighton. I mean, again, me and Archie say it almost every week on the review show, they seem so inconsistent and so bipolar with results in terms of last week getting a 2-1 win. Was that against Newcastle? I think it was. Yeah, getting that 2-1 win against Newcastle with Danny Welbeck getting the late goals. Um, this week, almost a different side. They fought back late, and I bet you were panicking before that Embuemo goal went in. But yeah, what did you think of the game? How are your team looking now?
Oh, what a game. It was fantastic to watch. It's one of the first United games where I've really got invested this season because I had the chance yesterday to sit down at home, watch it on the telly. I've been out for all the ones. I was sat in the back of Wembley last week at the NFL watching the United Liverpool game and walking through North London with it. So it was nice to sit down and get to watch United game, and they rewarded it with a fantastic performance. I mean, look, we started a bit shakily. Brighton took advantage, but then what Amorim did, or whether it was the players, they adapted. They dropped back into a back five, and that completely killed any of Brighton's chances. And United were clinical. I mean, that Cunha goal was fantastic, and I think Cunha is one of those players that, even though he hadn't scored up until this point, no one was really bothered because of the work that he was doing on the ball and off the ball. We saw him in the game at Liverpool last week. He was fantastic. Absolute credit to the win. And in all the games this season, he is, I think, the best Man United player I've seen with the ball at his feet in my lifetime, from what I can remember. And look, that's only over the last 10 years for anyone going, what are you talking about? But he is just so good on the ball, such good close control, brilliant touch. And we saw yesterday what he can do with a finish. That's been coming for a long time. And Bomo, again, fantastic from him. I think he's one of the players that actually people didn't realize how good he was going to be and how good he actually was at Brentford last year. And he went under the radar a little bit, and that's a really good thing. There was less of that pressure on him, and look, he's thriving. I mean, Casemiro is one that I really struggle with because sometimes he can be absolutely fantastic, and other times he can be very much off the boil. It's kind of one or the other. Yesterday he was brilliant, really good strike, took a massive deflection, but they all count, don't they? Welbeck's free kick was brilliant, to be fair. I just went, yeah, fair enough. The one at the end was a little bit nervy, I won't lie. But we got there in the end, and Amorim is starting to work for him. And I've said that I do think the system works. I think it needs slight tweaks, and I think he's started to do that. We've started to see a slight bit of adaptation. I didn't think it needed to be, right, okay, so we're going to go from a back three into a back four, and then we need to shift this into the midfield like everyone maybe wanted. But it just needed to be little tweaks. And going forward, that system, I think going forward is one of the best in the league. We saw Man City do it. Pep play through it at the back in City's prime time, and they had so many players flooding forward. It worked so well. They were unstoppable. I think when United come forward, they are one of the most dangerous teams in the league, and they're starting to convert chances. And that's dangerous. That's really good for Man United. They've just got to make sure that they're on it at the back and in these fine margins being on the right side of it.
Does see United rise up to sixth in the table, which gives me the opportunity to pose a moral question to you then. Would you take, at the moment, a sixth placed finish in the league, which I think would be a massive improvement and would show the progress under Amram? Would you take that, or would you rather, because competition football, certainly knockout football, seems to suit Amram, it certainly did in the Europa League, maybe not so much in the Carabao Cup earlier this season, but would you take so sixth place in the league, or you win the FA Cup but you finish ninth?
Oh, that is. I think I'd take six over the FA Cup win because Look, I think we can finish much higher than that. Look, I think I'd put us in 5th. I said we'd sneak into the Champions League spaces. And I actually think looking at the quality of the league, Amram can go even higher than that. If United keep it up, especially with having that one game a week, I think there's a lot more potential there. Look, there's the very outside chance that United get in that title race because everyone is kind of in it. I mean, they're 2 points off second at the moment. It's Arsenal that are trying to pull away, but we know what Arsenal can do. They can bottle it. There's that very outside chance, and I'm not going to get into that yet. We'll leave that for a few months down the line if it happens. But I think there's still potential. If I had to pick between the two, it'd be 6th and consistent good performances because you're getting your European football still anyway for next year. It's no different to what you'd get either way. Either way, you're going to get Europa League football. So I think I'd go 6th. You have a good season. You build on it next year. But I think we're going to be higher. We're going to be in the Champions League.
Bold predictions. We also have then waxed lyrical about the new signings. The other question I've got for you then, you've got Sesko, Acuna, and Embuemo. Start, bench, sell with your three new striking signings because I think that's a tricky one, isn't it?
Oh, Alex, that's so mean. I mean, I think all of them have been really, really good and showed really promising signs. Look, people will say, oh, Sesko less so, but actually he forced the 3rd goal yesterday. Really good pass and really good take on the ball, playing it into Mbomo. He showed that he can be a striker that gets involved in the play going forward, which is so useful for a play going forward. It's always been a graveyard shift at Man United in that striker role since Alex Ferguson left. Hopefully that's starting to change, especially with the striker getting a bit more involved higher up the pitch. And Bomo has just been scoring all the goals. Cunha's fantastic as well. I think on current form, I'd have to go start and Bomo, bench Cunha, sell Sesko. But I'm so pleased that we've got all 3 of them and they're all starting up front for Man United.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That is, I'll give you that. That's a valid response. Right, moving on then. We've covered one of our teams. It's time, I guess, to cover mine. Um, Brentford 3, Liverpool 2. Liverpool off the boil again. Improvements midweek against Frankfurt, but this is a side that in the Bundesliga are struggling themselves. They had to swap out their goalkeeper because of the poor performances he'd been putting in, and they put in a different one for that game. And even in that game, we went 1-0 down. So, but yeah, off the ball again with misplayed passes, poor shots. Some of the decision making was poor. But I don't think I can put it all on Liverpool. Whilst Liverpool were bad, Brentford were on fire and at times outplayed them. Henderson turned into prime Kevin De Bruyne at times, playing long balls over the top, which Igor Thiago and Dango Utaro were chasing. It was really interesting to watch a player who's in his mid-30s roll it back and just ping some balls through when he's got players willing to run. And I think a lot of credit has got to be given to Keith Andrews, who a lot of people predicted would be the first manager sacked, with Brentford in the bottom, kind of 3. I think he's shown his credentials. He's shown that the Brentford board have made the right decision promoting from within. It's not something we see in football management a lot, is that kind of within promotion. And you've got to give him credit because he's beaten my team and he's beaten your team. He seems to know what he's doing. There was some questionable refereeing in the game, a penalty that I don't think quite should have been a penalty because it was barely a free kick. Um, Slot now may be under pressure. What do you think? Is he under pressure? It's 4 losses in a row, but this is a man who has won the Premier League last season.
He's not under pressure, but this is what happens when you make wholesale changes and you don't play, I think, the players that necessarily fit the system that is effective. And I said it on the preview, like Slot was my manager to watch for this week. And I wanted to see if he had the bottle to make the big decisions. He did it in midweek. He dropped Salah. That was massive because he didn't necessarily fit in the system. Now, look, Salah scored a fantastic goal, but other than that, what did he do in this game? And I think that's kind of, I mean, some games Salah he plays unbelievably, last season particularly, but actually I think a lot of the time he's that kind of player that doesn't necessarily do too much, but then comes up with a big moment, rescues a team or two. So I think Slot needs to kind of continue prioritising the team rather than individual players. This is the problem with spending £500 million in the transfer window. Now, look, if any team had the opportunity to do it, they would. Liverpool have been waiting for this for years. but it's not quite working. And I know that Isak didn't. I don't think Isak played in this one, did he? Ekitike
Yeah.
started, but it's the kind of still premise that Ekitike is the better player on form at the moment than Isak and looks a lot more dangerous. He's got to start him. He's got to start the players that are gelling together. I think there was various bits about McAllister and stuff that Van Dijk even looked off it. So I think Liverpool just need something to get them going again, potentially in the league. Once they start to stack up like this, that's when the pressure comes. So I think Slot's not under pressure in terms of his job, but he will be feeling that from the fans. Look, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of 60,000 angry Scousers. So there you go.
I think by winning the title in his first season, he's almost bought himself more time and more respect from certainly Liverpool fans, but also the wider league as well. So I think that's why there's less of a kind of push, certainly online, for him to be sacked. I have seen some Liverpool fans say that maybe with Jurgen Klopp's comments on the Diary of the CEO podcast about willing to return to Liverpool, that creating some question marks. But I I think the only person who could come and replace Slot would be Klopp, but I don't think we're at that point yet. And I certainly would take, finishing in a Champions League spot. We're not a million miles off it now. I mean, bear in mind we won the first 5 games of the season anyway in a
Just
row.
about.
Um, yeah, but again, by no means were those performances good performances. They were,
No.
if anything, very similar to these ones. But to win 5 in a row and then lose 4 in a row is very up and down. And I would want to see that kind of return of obviously results. But moving away from Liverpool, before we get too much on it,
One
we
sec,
have to talk about.
Alex.
Go on,
Can
go
you just
on.
tell me where Liverpool are in the league?
We are, hang on, 7th,
And
below
where are
Manchester
Manchester
United.
United
Yes.
in the league?
Yeah, that is true. It is true. But get your Premier League trophy out, boss. That's what I thought. Um, right, moving on from Liverpool completely to talk about a former Liverpool captain, Jordan Henderson. Again, I mentioned earlier how well he played in that game, and an absolute credit to him to come back to the Premier League after his stint in Saudi Arabia and in Amsterdam. What do you think Jordan Henderson's role is in the England squad? Because he's performing well for Brentford. Thomas Tuchel likes him for certainly his leadership, but he can't be a starter, can he?
I don't know. I think with the quality that England have got in midfield, then you'd say absolutely not. But I think that leadership's massive, and we talk about it with various players. We talked about it with Harry Maguire last week. I was talking on Radio Manchester about it, and actually having that kind of player in the dressing room who can come on and put a shift in for you, but actually is a massive leader, can get players up for it. That's absolutely huge. Look, talent in football is one part of it, but confidence and willingness to play for the shirt and play for the team and put it in, I think is almost a bigger part. Because look, we see teams like Sunderland beating Chelsea yesterday. There's still definitely a difference in quality, monetary spend, but Sunderland had that more fight. And that's, I think, what Henderson is able to employ at Brentford. Look, he was there at Liverpool through the years of real toil. I think that sums it up. Klopp's early years and Brendan Rodgers and all sorts of stuff like that. And actually, he knows how to play in a fighting side. And that's exactly what Brentford are. Now, look, Brentford, we said on the preview, are still just inconsistent. You don't know what Brentford side's going to turn up. And we thought Brentford weren't going to turn up for this one, just like they didn't against Man City. Look, they proved us wrong. And when Brentford do turn up, they get a result. And I think that's the big moment for them. And when you've got someone like Henderson as a leader of your team, that's absolutely huge.
Right, moving on then back down to the south coast for Bournemouth versus Forest. 2-0 Bournemouth. Forest in another period of transition with Sean Dyche back in the Premier League. His first Premier League game for Forest. Bit of a disappointment, certainly after midweek, where in his first game they beat Porto. I'd argue that's a massive win. A, you don't see Sean Dyche in Europe too often, and B, beating a big European side like Porto. Bournemouth, though, just too much quality for him, really. Krupi scores again after his brace last week in the 3-3 game with Palace. The Cherries haven't lost since opening day, where they did lose to, obviously, a mediocre Liverpool side. Um, to Tavernier, however you say his name, Tavernier, whatever, however you say his name, it looks French. He scores directly from a corner, an Olympico goal. So poor defending, goalkeeping, whatever you want to call it, from Forest. Bournemouth up to fourth now in the Premier League, and I think it's safe to say they deserve it. Um, could we be seeing European football at the Vitality Stadium next season, George? What do you reckon?
I mean, I've got to start on this. If Sean Dyche doesn't, we don't see him in Europe very often. Where do you think he go on his holidays, Alex?
That's the kind of man that goes to Marbella. Absolutely, he goes. Maybe he goes out in Europe for his holidays, but only to Ibiza, any of the holiday islands. That man is not going on a cruise. Let's put it that way.
All inclusive Sean Dyche is what you get. But let's talk about Bournemouth. They're up to second now, to be fair to them. Not even fourth. It's Sunderland that are up to fourth. Bournemouth, 16 goals scored, 11 conceded, 5 wins. I mean, it's not looking bad for them, is it? They've not lost any of their last 5. They've got Man City up next. But what they're doing is they're being consistent. They're staying in games when they need to, and they're striking when they need to. And that is the sign of a good team. Now, Bournemouth, look, they've got their recruitment spot on. They're doing a little bit of what Brighton did a few years ago, where we thought, that's another £100 million player. How do they keep doing it? But they're showing that fight every single week. They're looking dangerous. I mean, look, when Semenyo leaves, that'll be a big loss for them, but he wasn't the one who scored the goals yesterday. And you've got other players in that team who are contributing. Look, Tavernier, fantastic corner, brilliant bend on it. It takes me back to when United conceded a corner at Bournemouth about 10 years ago, and that was assisted by the wind. This one was just a brilliant corner. Really good strike as well by Krupi. That was fantastic. Bournemouth have just got something in that stadium at the Vitality, which I don't think any of the team have got. There's a closeness and intimacy about it, and the atmosphere, the noise you get from it, I think that just creates something so special. And they absolutely do deserve to be in second. Can they get Europe? Yes. Where do they finish in Europe? I don't know. It'd be amazing if Bournemouth finish in the Champions League spots, but I don't think they will, just because there's not necessarily that experience. But absolutely, Europa League, Conference League, real possibility. Can they go far in a cup competition? Let's find out. They're out the Carabao Cup, aren't they? But the FA Cup, look, Crystal Palace won it last year. Why can't Bournemouth?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I apologise. They are second in the table, just 4 points behind Arsenal. So, potential title race. But yeah, they do look absolutely quality. And you're right. Yeah, they replaced an entire back line in one summer and don't look the worse for it. If anything, they're higher up the table. Arguably, they've improved. But the real question for a lot of these teams that, like we say, are overperforming will be how they perform over the Christmas period and after it as well, when the hard slog in the league kind of comes in. Talking about the hard slog in the league, though, it's time to move on to our current league leaders. Are still our current league leaders, Arsenal. They beat Crystal Palace 1-0. Eberechi Eze scoring against his former club. He chose not to celebrate, which, I think is fair play. But Arsenal are now 4 points clear. They've only conceded 3 goals in all competitions so far this season, which, considering they've played also in Europe, Athletic Bilbao and Atletico Madrid, I think they're really quality at the moment. Do you think they're favourites for the Premier League? I mean, bear in mind they are 4 points clear. And do you think they're the best team in Europe at the moment?
Of course, they're favourites for the Premier League, and I think a few of us had thought maybe Arsenal have gone now. Like, I predicted Liverpool to win the league very regrettably, just because of the quality that they'd brought in, and it's gone wrong. And I thought Arsenal would drop off. I thought they had their chance 3 seasons in a row, and it didn't come. But I've only just seen that they've only conceded 3 goals this season, and that is ridiculous considering the teams that they've played. They've played Man City, they've played Liverpool, they've played Man United. That is a really, really good run from Arsenal. They've won games that are difficult to win. You think back to them going to Fulham last week. That's a fixture that they've really struggled in the last few years. They've won this one against a Palace side that are doing the job that they need to at the moment. They are creating fantastic watches, and they are causing teams problems. But look, a 1-0 win, I mean, Arsenal would have liked more, I'm sure, like a 2-0, but I mean, a win's a win, isn't it? It's another clean sheet. brings more confidence. And Arsenal just doing that thing of ticking along, not bringing too much drama into it. I think there's been too much drama in previous years, and that's potentially where they've come unstuck. Now, if they can just keep winning and winning and winning, they will go clear in this league, and they should win it at a canter. Whether they're the best team in Europe, I don't know. On form, quite possibly, but I think overall, I would say no. Arsenal can't be the best team in Europe, can they?
I mean, it's looking more and more likely that maybe they are. But what we have learned about this Arsenal team is their worst enemy is themselves. And again, like we mentioned just previously, the real question will be certainly over that Christmas period when potential for more injuries arises. And those fixtures come in thick and fast, and certainly, like we say, if they're trying to compete on uh, multiple competitions, then they're really going to struggle. And talking of one of their opposition or one of the actual challengers, Manchester City lost to Aston Villa 1-0. Villa survived a City domination thanks to a Matty Cash goal there. I think Matty Cash only scores bangers. I don't think I've ever seen him score a goal that's like a tap in or you're like, "Ma." In every highlight reel, when I see a Matty Cash goal, it's like a screamer or I mean, this one was a lovely kind of half volley, or was it a full volley? I can't even think, but it was quality. That's how 4 games in a row won for Villa in the Prem. I also thought you might not be glad to hear this, but Jadon Sancho also looked to be quite, getting back to his best in the game as well. Um, they Villa also lost midweek to Go Ahead Eagles, but they are obviously competing in the Europa League. Do you think they should be favourites for the Europa League? They've obviously got a manager who's won it, a bunch of times, and they've picked up after their poor start to the season. They now look to be kind of kicking on. What do you reckon? Are they favourites for the Europa League?
I mean, firstly, Sancho can absolutely go to Villa and do well because he can leave United. We can make sure we get that loan money for him. All good by me. Um, but I think Villa, yeah, definitely are the favourites in Europa League. You look at the teams in there and they'd fancy themselves as one of the best considering what they did in the Champions League last year. And do you know what? We said Villa at the start of the season after they hadn't won a game yet. What's happened to them? They can't score goals. They're starting to now, like not on a crazy level like we've maybe seen Villa do in the past. They still only scored 9, conceded 8, but it's that 4 wins in a row. It's that getting momentum. That's absolutely massive for them to bring confidence to go and beat a team like Man City, who I said still aren't back to their best. I think people said, "Oh, are they in the title race now?" But City very much, I think, have been a moments team this year, both positively and negatively. Maybe they've had one half where they've played well and one half where they've just been completely off it. It makes me think back to that Brighton game where they were 1-0 up and then lost it in the second half. I think there's still very much goals in that Man City side. Look, Haaland put it in the net right at the end, but it's just offside. He's definitely back to being a quality player. He always was, but he's back to scoring form. But even with Haaland's goals, it's still, I don't think, is enough for City. I still think they'll be well off it in terms of the title. I don't think they'll necessarily be in the race right till the end. And I said that in my predictions at the start. So great result for Villa. Matty Cash, like you say, scoring great goals again. Not a bad position for them to be in as they travel to play Liverpool next. So yeah, sitting in 8th.
Yeah, I mean it's a real, completely two different sides of the story in terms of Villa now 4 games in a row after not having the greatest start to the season, and Liverpool, who, like I say, 5 wins in a row and now haven't won for 4 games in a row in the Premier League. A real, 50-50 chalk and cheese there of two very different sides with different fortunes. It'd be so typical if we won. Just like I can't, I wouldn't I wouldn't expect us to win, but when like just we put in an absolutely poor performance and beat, or no, we absolutely turn up and we look amazing. That'd be so typical in the game that we definitely shouldn't win against a team who deserve to be performing well. That's so typical. Right, moving on then to a team again that's performing well, but maybe deserve a bit better. Wolves lost 3-2 at home to Burnley. They fought back from being 2 goals down, only to lose in the 90 plus fifth minute to a Lyle Foster goal. Jorgen Strand Larsen gets his first goal of the season. Wolves are again showing some fight, but when you go 2-0 down, you shouldn't need to be 2-0 down to kick on in a game, really, should you? Wolves fans not happy, booing. There was a lot of them speaking to Strand Larsen at the end of the game. He was captain for the match. And a lot of them not happy with Vitor Pereira, which is surprising considering he's the pints man. He's the man that buys them a beer. Come on, it's Vitor Pereira. But credit to Burnley. Um, Fleming's brace was quality, exactly what you want from a kind of poacher. Hartman, 2 assists from him to lead to them. Liverpool were linked with him for a long time, so I'm quite disappointed that we've got Kirkes, who's similarly awful, and not Hartman. Um, but back to Wolves. This is very. I mean, this has been on the cards for Wolves for a while in terms of their results. Last couple of seasons, they've kind of trickled down the table into places that we wouldn't want them to be. They're in the relegation zone now. They're still without a win. Vitor Pereira's just signed a new contract, but as I said, the fans not really happy with the results and aspects of the performances. Do you think they should sack Vitor Pereira? Should they sack the Pints man?
I don't know. I think if there's the manager there to turn it around, then yes. If you can find that boss that would suit Wolves well, I think they've always needed quite a particular style, typically Portuguese, and that's without all the Portuguese players. But even if you look at the man in history, you're talking about Nuno and of course Vitor Pereira and various managers. They'd like a Portuguese manager, but I'll say it now, and you can clip it up all you want. Wolves are going down. Ninth game of the season. It's a certain. It's absolutely a certain. They don't look like they have anything. And look, West Ham are very close to that in terms of they don't look good at all, but there's at least that potential. Like West Ham could escape by the skin of their teeth. Wolves, it's a foregone conclusion. They've not won a game yet. They were very close to doing it at Spurs, and look, Spurs, I've got no idea. We'll get to them in a minute. But it's just there's nothing in that team that makes me think, yeah, that's what's going to keep them up. It was Mateus Cunha. He's now gone. I've said it so many times this season on the preview that he was their focal point. They've lost that. They've lost that player that just digs you out of a hole when you need it. And they've not really got anyone to do that now. They've not got anyone with the experience or the know-how to do it. And that's where they're struggling. So, yeah, Wolves, I think they need a massive change. Whether that's in the manager, whether that's in the players, whether that's just in their fortunes, who knows? But it doesn't look good. It's a foregone conclusion. Wolves are going down, and we're 9 games in.
I mean, it's interesting. You said they didn't have somebody necessarily to help them fight back, and I don't disagree with you. But in this game, they were 2-0 down and they did pull it back to 2-2. And they certainly had opportunities to win the game themselves. They also had opportunities to even make it a draw after it was made 3-2. So it is. Are there no players in their side that you can see pulling them out of this? I mean, Strand Larsen is valued at £70 million supposedly for Wolves, and like I say, he gets his first goal of the season. He's had some injury troubles. Could he not be the man that maybe at the occasional goal fires them out of the relegation zone?
Yes, when you're playing another team that you're fighting for relegation in Burnley, but let's talk about the other other 18 teams in the league apart from Wolves and Burnley that you're going to be playing every single week, because you're looking at most of those sides, the mid-table ones and your top six and whatever. That's where you're going to get pulled away. That's where the hole's going to be too deep. And that's when you players like Strand Larsen aren't going to be able to do anything because the game's already gone. Look, they got battered on the opening day against Man City, and it's not got any better since, has it?
No, true. And we mentioned earlier they've got Fulham next. That could be a really good opportunity that Vitor Pereira says to his players, look, they're only however many points above us. They're also struggling. This could be a really good opportunity for us to actually, prove that other teams are just as bad. But that's going to be there. I mean, this was a great opportunity, this Burnley game, to kind of show that they deserve to have that Premier League quality. I'd argue they did. 3-2 isn't a bad. I mean, it's a bad result because you're not getting points, but it's proof of fight back. but I think they're going to have to turn up against Fulham in order to prove that they still have that Premier League pedigree. Because at the moment, it's slipping out of their hands. Right, moving on then to our last game of game week 9. Everton 0, Spurs 3. A Mickey van der Ven brace. Um, two headers. Set pieces again. Clearly, Thomas Frank is texting his old set piece coach, Keith Andrews, for some help because they're just scoring set pieces. 3 goals from headers as well, because even the Saar one to finish off the game was also a header. Everton still, I'd say, in the game, forcing some really quality saves from Vicario. One from Beto that was an overhead kick where Vicario has very limited time to react, and another one that was a deflection, I think, from an Ilman Ndiaye shot that deflected twice and he still managed to save it. I think for Everton, the thing that they're missing is a striker that's really clinical. I don't think Beto's that man, unfortunately. He's a big lump of Portuguese something, but it's not goals. That's for facts. It's not goals. He had opportunities, and what you need is just to put one of them in, and I think that changes that game. As it stands, Spurs made use of their opportunities at set pieces to convert the 2 goals before Sarr finishes it off. Um, Spurs, I mean, I don't want to say that they're in a title race, but they're only, what, 5 points off Arsenal? They could be Arsenal's only real opposition at this point in the title race, but they are quite lukewarm themselves in terms of results and performances. Their next couple of games, they've got Newcastle in the cup, then Chelsea at home. That'll be a tricky game. Then they've got United at home, and then we've got the London derby at the end of November. I wonder if maybe by the end of November we could see Tottenham in a title challenge. What do you reckon?
If Spurs are in the title race, then Bournemouth are in the title race, Sunderland are in the title race, Man City are in the title race, United are in the title race, Liverpool are in the title race, Aston Villa are in the title race, and Chelsea are, because Spurs are not in a title race, just because they're sat up there after 9 games in third. Now look, Spurs have been better this season than they were, but there's still that inconsistency. And this game could have gone so differently, because if that Everton equaliser doesn't get ruled out, and look, I think it should have been ruled out. It was the correct decision, but if it doesn't, very different game. Everton possibly go on and win it, most likely ends up in a draw. I mean, look, fair play to Spurs for getting the job done. Massive result for them. But you look at these next games that they've got coming up. I mean, that game against Man United, that could be the 5th game in a row where Big Frank with his afro gets his haircut. So Spurs definitely aren't winning that one, that's for certain. But I just think there's too many inconsistencies still. I think there's some of them have been ironed out. I said this, I think, last week on the preview. The inconsistencies, some have been ironed out, but there's still a few left in there. And that's what's coming to haunt Spurs. I mean, you look at them losing to Villa, and you look at them losing to Bournemouth. You look at them drawing to Wolves just about. It's these games where you might call them fine margins, but they're really not, because they should be easy 3 points. You know, Spurs haven't lost a game this season if they don't have these inconsistencies. So that's a huge, huge result for them today, but it could be a lot better if they can get it right.
I mean, they're not really those games where you're absolutely right, they've got a goal down and they've not been able to fight and push to get an equaliser, apart from obviously the Wolves game where they left it late. But I think that's because they're missing Dominic Solanke quite a lot, and Richarlison and Tell aren't quite that number 9 that you need that will rescue you. In this game, it was Mickey van der Ven's brace, and he seems to come up a lot for them with goals. And before we finish, I do just want to touch on him because he is quality when he's not crippled by having to run the length of the pitch all game, because Ange Postecoglou's got him, running the length of the pitch. But he seems to be a really quality defender. He's fast, he's pacey, he's strong, he's tall. He gets on the end of corners for headers like this. Where do you think he ranks in terms of Premier League centre backs at the moment? Do you think he's one of the best?
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, he practically won the Europa League for the Spurs with a couple of goal line clearances in the final last year. And he comes up with goals regularly. He's dependable at the back. Look, all defenders have their little moments, and he does. But on the general consistency, he is consistent. He does the job that he needs to. And I think he's emerging as a leader in that Spurs team. That's really good for a centre back. I don't think he's particularly old either, is he? You know, he's came in a couple of years ago and is really starting to come into his own. Already was looking like a fine player. So, yeah, massive player for Spurs. I think he's one of those that could be there for the long term and potentially within the sights of maybe a Real Madrid if they ever need it. So, yeah, really good player, one of the best in the league at the moment. Let's see if he can help Spurs kick on.
Yeah, very true. Right, that is all that we have time for on the Premier League Lowdown Review Show. You can catch George, I expect, on one of the previews at some point. But if not, I will see you next time on the Premier League Lowdown Review Show. Thank you.